Gucci is one of the most famous fashion brands in the world, known for its luxury handbags, iconic double G logo, and popularity among celebrities. But what most people don't know is that its founder started his life as a dishwasher. Today, Gucci is worth well over $23.8 billion. However, this is not just a story of business success. What started as a small family business later turned into a dark and shocking tale of betrayal. Behind all the fame and success, Gucci went through a lot of family fights, legal battles, takeovers, and even murder. Welcome to the crazy and controversial history of Gucci. The story of Gucci starts with Guccio Gucci. He was born in Florence, Italy, and grew up working in his father's straw hat business. However, the family business went bankrupt, leaving Guccio with no money. In order to survive, at the age of 18, Guccio moved to London, where he got a job as a dishwasher at the famous Savoy Hotel. After a few months, he worked his way up and was promoted as a luggage helper. While working at the Savoy Hotel, Guccio noticed the rich and famous guests wearing luxury jewelry and clothes and carrying high-end suitcases made of fine leather. It wasn't just about functionality, it was about style and status. Guccio realized that the secret to understanding the wealthy guests was in their luggage. Soon, Guccio left the Savoy Hotel and joined Wagons Lit, a company that ran luxury trains in Europe. He traveled, served wealthy passengers, and watched how they lived with their servants and fancy luggage. It was during this time that he observed the luxury suitcase and handbag from very closely. By this time, Guccio understood that if he opened his own leather shop for wealthy customers like these, he could become very rich. However, Guccio also knew that starting his own leather business would take a lot of time and hard work. So he spent time learning about the leather industry and started saving money before opening his own. After World War I, Guccio got a job at Franci, a leather crafts company in Florence, where he learned in and out about leather. He handled different types and qualities of leather, facing many challenges along the way. But all this struggle taught him the skills he needed to start his own business one day. After working for a few years, Guccio gained enough experience and decided to start his own leather business. He wanted to make high-quality leather goods for customers who appreciated his fine craftsmanship. But the only problem was that Guccio's savings weren't enough to start his new business. Despite this, in 1921, at the age of 40, with his little savings and a small loan from a friend, Guccio and his family opened the first Gucci store. It was a small, humble store that eventually became the Gucci we know today. Guccio was very smart when it came to business. He knew he wanted to attract only wealthy customers. So, he chose to open his shop on Florence's most fashionable street, which was perfect for attracting the rich customers. At first, Guccio imported high-quality leather goods. He carefully selected strong, well-made handbags and luggage at good prices. But soon, he started receiving more requests for handmade, uniquely designed handbags and shoes. Guccio began to learn exactly what his wealthy customers wanted, and since he often couldn't find these designs from his suppliers, Guccio opened a small workshop behind the store to make his own leather goods based on customer orders. He also started a handbag repair business that became profitable quickly. To meet the growing demand, he hired local workers and built a reputation for offering great service and reliable products. Within the next few years, Guccio's business was doing so well that he acquired a larger workshop and hired 60 workers. However, the expansion quickly became too much for him, and he didn't realize that he had borrowed too much debt. In 1924, things went so bad for Guccio that he didn't have enough money to pay his bills. His money was stuck because some suppliers wanted him to pay for goods on credit, but many of his customers hadn't paid him yet. Guccio often talked to people about his problems, but no one trusted him enough to lend him money. Finally, his son-in-law gave him a small loan, which helped Guccio keep the business running. As Guccio got older, he had 3 sons, Aldo, Rodolfo, and Vasco, and all 3 joined the Gucci business. Guccio wanted that after him, all of his 3 sons would take over the company and grow the Gucci. But at this point, Gucci was nothing but just a small store. However, Guccio's sons had big plans to make Gucci even bigger. However, all 3 of Guccio's sons had bigger dreams about Gucci. They traveled all around Italy to see if there was any demand for Gucci products, and luckily they received positive responses in Rome. They wanted to expand and open a second store there, but Guccio disagreed. He was worried and warned his sons that it was too risky. Despite his warning, Guccio's sons went ahead and opened a second Gucci store. This time, luck was on their side. The store became very popular during World War II because soldiers were buying gifts for their wives and girlfriends back home. By the 1950s, Gucci had made enough profit to open a third store in Milan. At first, Gucci's first store in Florence didn't have many customers, but when American tourists came to Italy to visit famous places, they also started buying Gucci products. As more people wanted Gucci items, Italy became known for making high-quality luxury goods like leather shoes and handbags. However, as more Americans became interested in Italian designs, Guccio's sons decided to bring Gucci to America, particularly to New York. Americans were big fans of Gucci's high-quality leather bags and handbags, and many of them had already bought Gucci products while visiting Italy. Meanwhile, Aldo, Rodolfo, and Vasco took a flight to New York to search for a location for a new store. Soon, they opened their first international store in New York. They opened their New York store with just a $6,000 investment. By this time, Guccio was in his 70s and happy to see his business growing, but 2 weeks after opening the New York store, something tragic happened. Guccio passed away from a heart attack in one evening in 1953. Even though Guccio started his journey as a dishwasher, but when he died, he was a millionaire. After Guccio passed away, he left the company to his 3 sons but did not leave anything for his daughter, Grimaldo. She tried to fight her brothers in court, but unfortunately, she lost. Despite her husband's loan that once saved the company, she was left with nothing from the Gucci fortune. This was only the start of the family's legal drama. However, expanding to the United States turned out to be exactly what Gucci needed. It became the first luxury Italian brand in New York City and quickly gained attention, especially from Hollywood celebrities. As more celebrities started wearing Gucci, everyone else wanted to copy their style. For a while, the 3 brothers ran the company smoothly and enjoyed its growing success. But then, in 1974, came another twist. Vasco passed away, and since he had no children, his share in the company went to his wife. Aldo and Rodolfo, the remaining brothers, decided to buy her out so they could keep the ownership within the family. As a result, Aldo and Rodolfo each ended up owning 50% of Gucci. That same year, the Gucci brothers launched their first Gucci flagship store in Hong Kong. Gucci became one of the first brands to focus on expanding into the Asian market, and it paid off heavily. Aldo and Rodolfo continued to reinvest their profits into company growth. Meanwhile, by this time, these 2 brothers were no longer satisfied with just selling leather goods. They wanted to expand their product range and believed that perfume was the next big thing in luxury items, especially since many of their clients were women who loved perfume. As a result, in 1972, Gucci launched its first perfume. Over the next several years, Gucci was no longer just about leather luggage and perfumes. It grew into a global luxury brand selling purses, shoes, belts, wallets, and so much more. In short, Gucci was doing well, but at this point, it was still a family business. And there is an old Italian saying that when it comes to family businesses, the first generation builds, the second expands, and the third destroys. In fact, the same thing would happen to the Gucci family. However, just as Guccio shared his business with his sons, Aldo did the same. Aldo had 3 sons, Jojo, Roberto, and Paolo, and he gave each of them a small percentage of the shares along with small responsibilities. Meanwhile, Rodolfo Gucci kept his full 50% of the company and refused to give any shares to his only son, Maurizio. Aldo and Rodolfo, the 2 brothers from the second generation, had worked hard to make Gucci a global success. But as they got older, things started to change. The family began to argue about who would take over the company when they were gone. And then the situation got much worse when Maurizio wanted to marry a woman named Patrizia Reggiani. However, his father, Rodolfo, immediately disliked her. Before he became part of Gucci, Rodolfo had been a successful actor in Italian films. He knew what real glamour was, and to him, Patrizia didn't seem glamorous at all. He saw Patrizia as someone who only wanted to marry Maurizio to get their family fortune. She was such a gold digger that she once said,
"It's better to cry in Rolls Royce than to be happy on a bicycle." That's for sure.
She wanted everything: designer clothes, expensive homes, and most of all, the money. And in her mind, the quickest way to get it all was through Maurizio. Rodolfo warned his son Maurizio not to marry Patrizia, but Maurizio ignored his father. In 1972, he went ahead and married her, and later they had 2 daughters together. As time passed, Maurizio started to regret his choice, wishing he had taken his father's advice. By marrying Patrizia, Maurizio made his relationship with his father worse. Rodolfo chose not to give any shares to his son Maurizio while he was alive, but after Rodolfo passed away, since he had no wife or other children, Maurizio got the full 50% of the company. Not just this, Rodolfo left Maurizio a massive inheritance, which included luxurious properties in Switzerland, Milan, and New York, millions of dollars in bank accounts, and half of the highly profitable Gucci company. Suddenly, Maurizio had gone from having nothing to owning everything, but that didn't stop Maurizio and his cousins from constantly fighting over how to run the business. This third generation all had very different visions for the Gucci company. However, when Maurizio Gucci took control of the company, Gucci was making a lot of money by allowing department stores to sell Gucci branded products. This made the brand available to almost everyone, not just the wealthy. While this brought in tons of money, Maurizio felt it was ruining Gucci's image as a luxury brand. He believed Gucci should be something special, only for the rich and famous. To make things even worse, fake Gucci products started being sold on street corners in cities all over the world. Maurizio wanted to bring back the feeling that Gucci was only for the rich, so he decided to stop licensing the brand. By doing this, Gucci immediately lost over $100 million. At first, it looked like a terrible idea, but many believe it actually saved the company. By making Gucci harder to get, it became a true symbol of luxury once more. This move helped turn Gucci into the iconic brand it is today. Meanwhile, Maurizio's cousin Paolo felt that his father had treated him unfairly by only giving him a small share in the company. Paolo had always dreamed of becoming a fashion designer, and he believed he should be the one designing for Gucci. Sadly, no one in the Gucci family liked his designs. One thing everyone in the family agreed on was that Paolo's designs weren't good. Paolo was so angry with his family that he decided to make a name for himself outside of the family business. He launched his own brand called Paolo Gucci, believing this was his chance to show his creativity. But his family didn't like this idea. They worried that using the Gucci name on his line would damage the brand's reputation. They tried to stop him and took him to court, but Paolo didn't give up. He spent $8 million on court and finally won the right to use his name for his fashion line. Unfortunately, a few years later, it became clear that everyone in the Gucci family had been right. Paolo's dream didn't turn out as he expected. His brand struggled, and the sales weren't enough to pay off the huge debt he had built up. To make matters worse, Gucci bought back the rights to the Paolo Gucci name and took his products off the market. Eventually, Paolo thought his family had sabotaged him by taking back the rights to his name and removing his products from stores. But the truth was that his designs and business decisions also played a big part in his failure. Paolo was so angry with his family that he betrayed his 81-year-old father, Aldo, by accusing him of tax evasion. Because of this, Aldo was sentenced to 366 days in prison. It was clear that Paolo was adding more fuel to the ongoing family drama. Maurizio wanted to grow Gucci and make bigger changes, but the problem was, he and his cousins kept fighting over little things. It frustrated him, and he wanted to take control without involving the rest of the family. To do that, he decided to find investors, and luckily, a company called InvestCorp agreed to invest in Gucci. At this point, Paolo became the black sheep of the family. He owned 3.3% of Gucci, and Maurizio somehow convinced him to sell his shares to InvestCorp. In 1988, Paolo sold his shares for $40 million. Unfortunately, Paolo didn't use the money wisely. He spent it all, and by 1993, Paolo had declared bankruptcy, with debts around more than $90 million. Over time, Maurizio convinced his family members to sell their shares to InvestCorp as well. By the end of 1988, InvestCorp owned 50% and Maurizio owned the other 50%. Even though InvestCorp owned half of Gucci, they still let Maurizio run the company and make all the big decisions. In 1989, he hired Dawn Mello as the executive vice president and chief designer. She had the same vision as Maurizio, making Gucci more exclusive. When Dawn Mello joined Gucci, she immediately made some changes to make the brand feel more exclusive and high-end. The first big change she made was reducing the number of Gucci stores from 1,000 to just 180, focusing on the most profitable ones. This helped make Gucci feel more special and luxurious. She also cut the product range from 22,000 to 7,000, ensuring that every item was of the highest quality. To bring back Gucci's legacy, Mello reintroduced classic items like the bamboo bag and Gucci loafers, reminding everyone of the brand's rich luxury history. Meanwhile, Maurizio Gucci had big plans to change the direction of the brand. With the family no longer involved, he wanted to turn Gucci into a brand only the wealthy could afford. He opened an expensive new store in Milan, but it ended up adding more debt to the company. Maurizio also decided to replace all of Gucci's old products with new ones, which cost a lot of money. One of Maurizio's most controversial decisions was cutting Gucci's accessories line. This was risky because accessories like wallets, belts, and sunglasses are a big part of the company's income. These items were affordable for people who couldn't afford the high-end clothes, shoes, or bags. By removing them, Maurizio made Gucci even more exclusive, but it also meant losing a large group of customers. Another big mistake Maurizio made was removing the iconic GG logo. The GG logo was a symbol of Gucci that people recognized all over the world, and it represented 70% of the company's sales. Maurizio thought it was old-fashioned, but removing it ended up being a huge mistake. Because of all these changes, Gucci started losing a lot of money. The company was losing $30 million every year, and the costly decisions left it deep in debt. While Maurizio had a big vision for Gucci, his decision didn't work out and left the company in a tough situation. Gucci was close to going bankrupt. The company couldn't even pay salaries to its employees, all because of Maurizio's risky plans for the brand. Investcorp, the investment firm that owned half of Gucci, was losing billions, and they started to panic about what would happen next. Because of this, Investcorp felt that Maurizio was not capable of running the company, and later things got so bad that Investcorp made a decision that even shocked Maurizio. Investcorp wanted to bring in a new CEO to turn things around, but Maurizio refused. He didn't want to give up control and said that customers just needed more time, at least 6 months, to understand his vision and start buying again. But Investcorp didn't listen. In 1993, Investcorp bought Maurizio's 50% stake in Gucci for $150 million, bringing his time with the company to an end. Ironically, just 6 months later, Gucci started to recover. Japanese customers began buying Gucci bags again, and the company's profits came back, just like Maurizio had said. Some of Maurizio's choices didn't work out, but others helped Gucci become a true luxury brand again, able to sell at high prices. But for Maurizio, it was too late. After a 72-year legacy, the Gucci family was officially out of the Gucci business. And sadly, just 2 years after losing control of Gucci, Maurizio Gucci would be dead. However, Maurizio and his wife Patrizia's relationship was not as good as it had been before marriage. They were constantly arguing with each other. Patrizia was often unhappy with their life together, and as time went on, their marriage became more and more worse. Finally, in 1994, Maurizio decided to divorce Patrizia. She was really angry about it and kept leaving him threatening voicemails. Even though Maurizio tried to move on with his new girlfriend, Paola, but Patrizia wouldn't let that happen. She was afraid that if Maurizio married Paola and started a new family, she and her daughters would lose the money they were getting from him. That money was the only thing affording her luxury lifestyle, which Patrizia didn't want to lose. Then, on March 27, 1995, Maurizio Gucci was walking to his office in Milan when a hitman suddenly approached him. In the middle of the day, the hitman shot Maurizio 3 times in the head, killing him on the spot. The murder was shocking, especially since it happened in such a busy area. The news of Maurizio's murder was left a shock on the whole of Italy. At the time of his death, Maurizio had made many enemies due to the family drama and fights over control of Gucci. The police had a long list of possible suspects to investigate. For the next 2 years, the case went nowhere, and it seemed like the investigation would never lead to an answer. But after 2 years of no progress, the case took a surprising turn when the police received an anonymous tip. This tip led them toward Patrizia Reggiani, Maurizio's ex-wife, as someone who might be involved in the murder. It turned out that Patrizia had been asking around for months about how to kill her ex-husband and get away with it. She wanted revenge and didn't care about the consequences. She even asked her lawyer if there was any way to do it without getting caught and going to prison. Patrizia got help from her close friend Pina, who helped her find and hire a hitman. She paid the man to kill Maurizio. They carefully planned the murder, and in the end, the hitman did his job. During her trial, Patrizia's behavior surprised many people. Even though she was facing murder charges, she insisted on wearing only the best Gucci clothes in front of the cameras. She cared more about how she looked than the serious situation she was in. Patrizia Reggiani was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 29 years in prison. The hitman who killed Maurizio was sentenced to life in prison. But even though Patrizia was in prison, Gucci's story didn't end there. The company continued to grow in new ways. After Maurizio Gucci's death, Gucci started a new chapter. Gucci boosted its popularity again when they hired Tom Ford as the new designer. He brought back the classic Gucci logo and created collections that appealed to younger audiences. Working with CEO Domenico De Sole, they became a powerful team and helped Gucci bounce back. From 1995 to 1996, the company's sales almost doubled, going from $263 million to $500 million. Now that the Gucci family was out of the business and no more constant fighting over control, things finally started to improve for the company. Seeing this, Investcorp decided to take advantage and made Gucci a publicly traded company in 1995. The IPO went really well, better than anyone expected. Investcorp sold their shares and made a huge profit of $2 billion. They managed to sell at the right time because in 1997, Gucci's stock price dropped due to a crisis in Japan's luxury market. When Gucci's stock price dropped, LVMH saw it as an opportunity to buy shares at a cheaper price. Bernard Arnault, the CEO of LVMH, said he wanted to take over Gucci in a friendly way. Bernard had a reputation of acquiring other major luxury brands. Bernard's actions made Gucci's CEO worried. To stop this from happening, Gucci's CEO teamed up with an investor to raise money. They planned to buy smaller brands so Gucci could compete with LVMH instead of being taken over. Today, the Gucci Group owns several well-known fashion brands like Balenciaga, Stella McCartney, Saint Laurent, and Alexander McQueen. The two key people behind Gucci's success, Tom Ford and Domenico De Sole, both left the company in 2004. Even after they left, Gucci stayed very popular and has continued to grow. As of today, Gucci has more than 538 stores worldwide, with 117 of them in the USA. It all began with a man who started out as a dishwasher, and over time, the family business grew and lasted for 3 generations. But sadly, it was lost by the 3rd generation. If you enjoyed this story, I highly recommend checking out the Enzo Ferrari video next. You'll love it. Just click the thumbnail and I'll see you there.